America great again.
RPN is not responsible for the views, actions, statements, or opinions of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Good evening, everyone. And of course, welcome back to another very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. Hope you guys are having a lovely day. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you also to Frodo Baggins for that $25 Bitcoin tip via the Rumble wallet. Appreciate you, homie. Thank you so much to FilterDog1, who says the WEF has discovered that globalism failed. The WEF has had the failure of globalism shoved down their collective necks. Trump1 says, hello there. Have a blessed day, friend. You have a blessed day, too. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. All right, well, like I said yesterday, it looked to me like President Trump was creating a competing global body which would be used to disenfranchise and neuter the United Nations, and it appears even more likely today. Now, I'm sure there are people out there, oh, well, it's another global organization. No. It's an organization for the world comprised of sovereign nations where the so-called rule of international law will not apply. What applies is free market diplomacy. The meeting of the minds, a collection of nations, each interested in their own best interests, in the best interests of their people, which is the only thing they should be talking about and the only thing they should care about. Nobody should be bowing to any other nation. President Trump creating a lasting peace and bringing about the golden age, not just for the people of the United States of America, but for the people of the world. So do me a favor, hit that like button, help us out by sharing the show, and then sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn, because we're going to get into it right now. All right, you guys, so much has happened today. I've got a bunch of stuff combining things from President Trump's press conference from yesterday, along with his speech at Davos earlier today. Also, a number of updates to many different stories that we've been tracking for quite a long time. I would like to begin, first of all, by showing you guys a very special little clip that came out during President Trump's press conference yesterday. So, there has been some discussion about dividend checks paid to the American people from the profits of the tariffs that have been paid into the coffers of the United States of America. Some people have said, well, I don't need $2,000. A lot of other people have said, you know what, $2,000 would be just about awesome right now. At the end of the day, I think every single one of us want us to get rid of that debt. Get rid of the debt, go to a balanced budget, stop spending more than we have, start treating this nation like a business. We need to run it for profit, for the benefit of the people of the United States of America. And when we spend more money than what we actually have, the only way to get that money, traditionally speaking, historically, has been to tax the people of the United States of America. All of that is changing. Now President Trump is looking outward to capture revenue to support us here in the United States. And he has said on so many different occasions that we can do both. We can pay down the debt. We can have other nations pay their fair share, stop taking advantage of the United States of America, and enfranchise the people of the United States by helping put that wealth that we as a nation are able to create right into their pockets. People have wondered what the mechanism for this might be. Of course, a lot of people would say that, well, it has to be done by an act of Congress. Well, just in the same way that President Trump is showing that these global governance bodies are illegitimate, especially when it comes to the desires and the needs of the people of the United States of America, we will no longer participate in organizations and bodies that run counter to the needs of the United States of America. perhaps Congress is not so necessary either.
With Kevin Hassett on that, or do you think you can do that unilaterally?
No, I don't think we would have to go the Congress route, but we'll find out. The reason we're even talking about it is that we have so much money coming in from tariffs that we'll be able to issue at least a $2,000 dividend and also pay down debt for the country. But we'd do a $2,000 dividend to the people of our country. Would probably set a limit of income limit where it made sense, but. We will be able to make a very substantial dividend to the people of our country. I believe we can do that without Congress.
We can do that without Congress, and we can pay for everything that the United States needs to run our day-to-day operations without taxing the American people. That is coming. President Trump and his administration have broadcast that out as a signal on so many different occasions. We are working our way towards that, and right now President Trump is laying the groundwork to ensure that happens. Now, also something that President Trump has mentioned in the past is the reopening of mental institutions, places for treatment and the housing of people who are severely mentally incapacitated, whether they be criminally insane or whether they've just been abandoned by society and they're living out on the streets with really no wits about them. President Trump has now signed that executive order. Many of these people, these homeless people, you find them in Democrat-run cities. Of course, we have a homeless problem all across the United States, but by and large, they tend to congregate in these Democrat-run cities, and there is a homeless industrial complex in the same way that there is a military industrial complex or there is a pharmaceutical industrial complex. Anywhere that money congregates, fraud, waste, and abuse will also be drawn to that. So President Trump yesterday during his press conference announced the signing of this historic executive order, which will bring back mental institutions and insane asylums to the United States. There will be no more catch and release, no more allowing dangerous, mentally unstable individuals to simply roam the streets and look for victims or find themselves to be so mixed up about what they see in front of their faces that they end up perhaps inadvertently hurting themselves or someone else. President Trump spoke about this during the press conference, and we've got the clip right here. I'm probably going to have to get past this commercial real quickly. Again, thank you very much to Trump One, who says Patriots versus Steelers. I like that. Little football reference there. Even I get that. Why is there no? Oh, there we go.
There's a reason for bail, long tested. Signed an executive order to bring back mental institutions and insane asylums. We're going to have to bring them back. Hate to build those suckers, but you got to get the people off the streets.
Now, it doesn't mean that we have to house people indefinitely, that they need to be living in an insane asylum for the rest of their lives. However, there are people, some of them, who will require that. Otherwise, you're going to have dangerous, criminally insane people roaming the streets, and you're going to have the situation that we find ourselves in today. Also, if there is no more opportunity for non-governmental organizations and 501c3s to come in and grift off the supposed mission of helping homeless only to take those hundreds of millions of dollars and put them in their own pocket, then we're simply going to eliminate that homeless industrial complex, and we can get about the business of truly helping the people who need it. Now, we also have this from President Trump yesterday in reference to that Board of Peace. Again, I said yesterday, I think we're at the point where the United Nations is no longer going to be a relevant organization. And President Trump said it himself. I missed it during the press conference yesterday, but he said that the Board of Peace may replace the United Nations. But with the idea of the coining of the phrase of free market diplomacy, President Trump says that, he actually wants the United Nations to stick around. And some people might bristle at that idea. But when the United Nations is currently the only global governance body, and I use that term loosely, you have nothing else to compare it to. What you will have if the United Nations continues to exist at the same time the Board of Peace is bringing together a coalition of sovereign nations, which will essentially be the sovereign alliance that many of us have been speaking about for several years. you will have the comparison starkly displayed right in front of you. President Trump and the Sovereign Alliance with the Board of Peace, and then the United Nations, which is largely made up of a series of deep state and criminal cabal members that seek to not enfranchise and help develop sovereign nations, but to stifle that sovereignty, to turn them into vassal states of this global New World Order cabal. And President Trump will be the one who will be successful. Meanwhile, the United Nations will largely crumble. The money should dry up, and perhaps in the near future, in the same way you have companies who don't do a good job going up against a company who has a superior product, the United Nations will likely fold and they will cease to exist. Let's take a listen.
Do you want your Board of Peace to replace the UN?
Well, it might. I mean, the UN just hasn't been very helpful. I'm a big fan of the UN potential, but it has never lived up to its potential. The UN should have settled every one of the wars that I settled. I never went to them. I never even thought to go to them. They should be able to settle those wars. They don't. I believe you got to let the UN continue because the potential is so great.
The potential to show that stark contrast between the Board of Peace and the failed United Nations as an experiment in global governance, which has destroyed itself because globalism is now dead, is going to be something that I think will be very powerful. In the same way that President Trump has allowed all of these other things to continue operating as he has been moving behind the scenes and putting the pieces together, moving those pawns and such on the chessboard, the results speak for themselves. Take a look. As an example, look at the Biden administration and look at the Trump administration. The entire nation was in disarray, and they were even talking about it at the World Economic Forum at Davos. So we'll touch back on that in just a moment. In the same way, what has the United Nations done to ever end wars on planet Earth? Despite the existence of the United Nations and this forum for nations to come together and have a neutral ground to speak to each other and ostensibly work out their differences, it never seems to happen. But I'll tell you what the United Nations is very good at. They're very good at funneling money to non-governmental organizations. They're very good for having their own peacekeepers go out and traffic children and rape women and engage in criminal behavior in foreign lands. They're very good at providing a cover for money to be laundered. But the one thing they're not good at, that they should be good at, is solving conflicts. The Board of Peace will be that body, and President Trump will be the chairman of that board. Now, in regards to the Board of Peace, we've had several more nations announce that, yes, in fact, they will be joining. These are nations sometimes that have not even been on the radar of the global body like the United Nations. Sure, maybe they're in there, but you never hear about them because they're not offered any sort of respect or anything like that. Well, the president of the Republic of Kosovo has just announced that she is deeply honored to accept President Trump's proposal to represent Kosovo as a founding member of the Board of Peace. She says we're going to stand shoulder to shoulder with the United States in the pursuit of a safer world. True leadership doesn't just talk about peace, it delivers it. That is exactly what President Trump is doing through this historic initiative. And again, for people who have criticisms of President Trump, take a look at what he's accomplished in this 1 year. Think about how many millions of lives he has saved through the resolution of at least 8 conflicts, soon to come, the special military operation between the Ukraine and Russia. That will end as well. This is wholly unlike any global leader we have ever had, certainly unlike any president we have ever had here in the United States. President Trump has directly neutered the military-industrial complex. President Trump has gone to the executives of these military contractors and told them directly, either you deliver for the benefit of the American people, or you can probably try to get a job someplace else. But good luck. What your whole business model is designed around providing for the United States government, for the Pentagon, and for the war machine. But we are not going to need the war machine anymore. However, it doesn't mean that we're going to stop making weapons. It doesn't mean that we're going to stop having soldiers or we're going to disband our military. President Trump's entire philosophy has always been peace through strength. You have to achieve peace through your willingness to use the tools at your disposal. It doesn't mean that we're going to, but the world, our enemies, our adversaries, and yes, even our friends need to understand that given a certain set of circumstances, we have the wherewithal to use those tools at our disposal. America helped bring peace to Kosovo, she continues. Today, Kosovo stands firmly as America's ally, ready to help carry that peace forward. History remembers those who take bold steps to peace, and we are ready. I want everybody to just remember what I asked you there. Think about any other leader in the history of the world and just stack it up against Trump. Stack it up against Trump and the lives that he has saved through the resolutions of these conflicts. It's unlike anyone else. No one else has ever done anything like this. You've had plenty of leaders go out to the United Nations and to other global organizations, go to the World Economic Forum, etc., and talk about the need for peace, talk about the need for resolution. Endless meetings, endless phone calls, endless press conferences. But you know what President Trump does? He makes the peace. He actually did what he said in the same way he is doing what he said he would do here in the United States of America. Lisa, Rick says that there's a troll in the chat. I don't see it yet, but if you can take care of it. All right, now, also announcing their membership in the Board of Peace, you have the foreign ministers of Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, Jordan, Indonesia, Pakistan, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. They have released a joint statement welcoming the invitation extended to their leaders by President Donald Trump. You can see in the letter here that they have sent collectively. The ministers of all those nations I just mentioned welcome the invitation extended to their leaders by the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, to join the Board of Peace. The ministers announced their country's shared decision to join the Board of Peace. Each country will sign the joining documents according to their respective relevant legal and other necessary procedures, including the Arab Republic of Egypt, the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, and the United Arab Emirates that have already decided to join. The ministers reiterate their country's support for the peace efforts led by President Trump and reaffirm their country's commitment to supporting the implementation of the mission of the Board of Peace as a transitional administration as set out in the comprehensive plan to end the Gaza conflict and endorsed by the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2803, aimed at consolidating a permanent ceasefire, supporting the reconstruction of Gaza, and advancing a just and lasting peace grounded in the Palestinian right to self-determination and statehood in accordance with international law, thereby paving the way for security and stability for all countries and people of the region. President Trump has done what so many people thought was absolutely impossible. I certainly never believed that we would have peace in the Middle East or that there would be anything approaching a ceasefire between the Jews and the Palestinians or that, the fighting would ever stop. The one thing that I'll say, in light of all of these nations agreeing to join the Board of Peace, Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, still has yet to accept President Trump's offer. I think that if Israel wants to remain a relevant player in the region, then it's going to be something they must do. And I believe they will. I believe President Trump is creating a sort of framework which will require all of these countries, if they want to be part of the Golden Age and the Trump world order, leaving behind the New World Order, then they are going to have to play with these new rules. Now, that means that the United Nations is losing power. Brussels is losing power. The European Union is losing power. The World Economic Forum is losing power. One by one, each of these global organizations is losing their relevancy in the modern age. And that is only due to the efforts of President Donald J. Trump. Now, we also have Belarus, Hungary, Serbia, and Slovakia also announcing that they are joining and backing the Board of Peace. President Trump's proposed Board of Peace is no longer just an American idea. It is quietly turning into a geopolitical club, a club where nations can come together, truly sovereign, supporting their citizens, supporting their nations, supporting the needs of those citizens and nations. And they'll know that they're going to be able to hammer out a framework because President Trump's number one drive in life is to make deals. So far, the countries that have openly signed on are the ones I mentioned. You have Belarus. Lukashenko was confirmed. Hungary, Viktor Orban has confirmed. Serbia, Vucic is publicly welcomed the initiative. In Slovakia, Robert Fico, the man that they tried to kill because he was not willing to go along with the globalist New World Order, he has joined. Meanwhile, you have the Czech Republic. Don't know that they've joined yet, but their leader, Babis, has openly praised President Trump and echoed the idea of sovereign states, which is so vital. The United Nations and these other global organizations have been about the destruction of sovereign nations. They want open borders. They want everyone to have free reign. They want to import third world peoples into first world nations so that they can destroy the economy, so that they can bring down the morale of the people, so that they can siphon wealth out. Israel is currently in close contact with President Trump's team, but they have yet to join. And then you also have several African leaders who were present at talks, and they have expressed interest. I believe that they will. The EU, though, however, the EU as a global body is not joining. I haven't heard anything about them suggesting they might join. It is simply individual nations within the European Union. I think that ultimately we may see the European Union itself dissolve because the European Union has a collection of unelected bureaucrats who oversee all of these sovereign nations in Europe. They make decisions for all of these nations. The people of those countries have no say in those laws, essentially regulations that get passed, and the nations, and the organization itself in Brussels is merely a tool of that globalist deep state. So European Union leaders are backing this diplomatic platform outside of the control of the European Union. And this just a few years ago would have only been possible if the EU global governance body would have said that it was something okay for them to do. Here we have Lukashenko from Belarus signing the paperwork himself. Think about how much smack is talked about Lukashenko on the global stage. You know, I mean, he's a former Russian vassal state, former part of the Soviet Union. Many people in the global society tend to see Belarus as, really just a pawn of Vladimir Putin. But they are their own sovereign state, and they deserve just as much say in what happens in their region as anybody else. Now, President Trump, in his press conference yesterday, was also asked by a reporter for Lindell News whether or not the arrest of Nicolas Maduro has yielded any new information about the stolen election of 2020.
Thank you so much, President Trump. Kara Castronova from Lindell TV. Spoke earlier about the 2020 election. Now that Maduro is in U.S. custody and he was criminally charged, has any more information emerged that you could share with us regarding Venezuelan election software and Venezuelan ties to tampering with the 2020 election? And would you consider speaking to Maduro personally in prison in New York to get some answers on Venezuela's involvement with the 2020 election?
No, I don't think I would be doing that. I think my lawyers would be very unhappy if I did that. Yeah, they've learned some things. Please.
So, short but sweet, they've learned some things. I think that, once again, the operation to remove Maduro from Venezuela was an extraction, and one very, very important part of it was to get him out of there so that they could get the information that was necessary to hold people accountable for the stolen election of 2020. President Trump has repeatedly kept the pressure on about that stolen election. I have several more comments from President Trump that were made in the last 24 hours. We're going to go over them as well. But I did want to touch on something that we talked about yesterday, and that was the appointment of now former Eastern District of Virginia prosecutor, who has, of course, been forced out as a result of the fact that the Senate was unable to bring her vote to a call because of the blue slip policy. So Lindsay Halligan is now officially leaving the Department of Justice, and this is a tragedy in my mind. Pam Bondi posted this earlier today after that decision by the judge yesterday. During her 120-day tenure as interim United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, Lindsay Halligan served with the utmost distinction and an unwavering commitment to the rule of law. By prosecuting the most serious offenders, including violent criminal illegal aliens, murderers, and child abusers, Lindsay worked tirelessly to protect the more than 6 million residents of Eastern Virginia. Democratic senators weaponized the blue slip process, making it impossible for Lindsay's term as United States Attorney to continue following the expiration of her 120-day appointment. Despite multiple unnecessary legal obstacles placed in her path, Lindsay stepped forward at a critical juncture for our nation and fulfilled her responsibilities with courage and resolve. Her departure is a significant loss for the Department of Justice and the communities she served. While we will feel her absence keenly, we are confident she will continue to serve her country in other ways. Maybe she will have a different position within the administration. We don't know yet. As far as I know, she hasn't made a comment. The circumstances that led to this outcome are deeply misguided. We are living in a time when a democratically elected president's ability to staff key law enforcement positions faces serious obstacles. The Department of Justice will continue to seek review of decisions like this that hinder our ability to keep the American people safe. Now, I want to go back to what I said yesterday, and that is that the Senate at this time is the greatest impediment to President Trump successfully fulfilling the mandate that we elected him to implement in America. Right now, it's the Senate, the filibuster, the 60-vote rule, and this blue slip bullshit, which is stopping the votes on President Trump's appointments. Yes, they have been able to get some people through, but the most important ones, up until this point, they have been unwilling to do what is necessary. Now, J.D. Vance was interviewed last night, and in this interview, J.D. talks about the discontent that the American people have and some upcoming things that I believe every single one of us has been waiting to see. But he also addresses the inaction of the Senate and the fact that if it's not for them, we would have somebody like Lindsay Halligan doing the work that needs to be done.
Last question, Arctic frost. It is getting bigger, and I talked to sources this morning. It's about to explode. And things that we thought were long lost and gone, I want to be a little cryptic, are not lost.
That's right.
And they're not gone.
That's right. Yeah, I want to be a little cryptic, too, because I know that we're it's still in the early stages of this investigation. But look, Sean, I think it's one of the great scandals in American history. I think this is definitionally the Biden administration, the deep state, using the apparatus of justice to go after their political opponents. And I also think it raises a very critical issue and something that I'd encourage my Senate friends on the Republican side to wake up about, because eventually you're going to see prosecutions, not just Arctic frost related, but on a whole host of other issues. Eventually, we need certain subpoenas that have to be issued by a court. Eventually, you need local prosecutors, U.S. attorneys, to go after some of these people in a court of law. If you can't get a U.S. attorney appointed because the Democrat won't give you a blue slip, or you can't get a judge confirmed because the Democrats are gumming up the work of the Senate, Republicans have got to open up their perspective a little bit. And again, I say that some of these people are very dear friends of mine, but why do we allow the blue slip process to prevent the president from appointing a U.S. attorney? Why do we let the blue slip process make it impossible for Donald Trump to appoint a federal judge in California? If you want justice, you've got to empower the President of the United States to actually appoint the officers of justice all over the country. The Democrats are stalling that. And we're going to wake up in a couple of years, if we don't have more U.S. attorneys approved, if we don't have more judges approved, we're going to wake up in a couple of years and realize that we've done a lot of great work at the Trump administration, but justice is not being meted out as it should be because we don't have the people on the ground. That is a big problem. And I know that that's somewhat unrelated to Arctic frost, but it actually is related to Arctic frost, because you cannot get the justice for the people who are targeted by the Biden administration unless we've got good people, especially in these U.S. attorneys' offices. And that's something, Sean, we got to pay attention to over the next year.
It's sad because the statute of limitations. I make the argument all the time that from the moment he and Melania came down that escalator. They've been out to
No, he doesn't wear black eyeliner. He's just got really thick lashes.
destroy him, and using the very
100%.
heavy arm, deep powers, deep state to do it. And
spying on him, prosecuting him,
horrible.
Investigating
Senators, congressmen
who are just aligned with the President of the United States. You're right. Some of this stuff is going to get
Talk
covered
show
by
host.
statute of limitations.
Yeah.
Some of this stuff, Sean, some of this stuff we can and we should prosecute. And I'm just telling you, this is going to be a real problem. And the people who watch your show are going to get really pissed at Senate Republicans, excuse my language, if we don't have the U.S. attorneys on the ground to actually achieve justice. People are going to get angry, and rightfully so.
People are already angry. We have done a tremendous amount. President Trump and the administration have achieved some historic milestones in this first year. But we should, by all rights, be much further along. There is always a question of timing when it comes to things like this. But the timing means F all if we don't have the people in place that are necessary to bring the justice that every single one of us wants to see. And I will firmly put that blame on the shoulders of every single person in the Senate. The Republicans, they're just as bad as the Democrats, perhaps even worse, because they will say one thing to your face. And then, of course, as soon as the doors are closed, they're going to be sitting down with their friends and they're going to be just perfectly fine, chumming it up, yucking it up. The reason they're allowing the filibuster to remain, the reason they're allowing the blue slip process to remain is, in my opinion, because I think they're hedging their bets. They truly, at the end of the day, they don't want the system to be fixed. They all benefit from the broken system. They benefit from the corruption. And if they publicly come out against their colleagues who they already know are guilty as sin, then if these people are successfully able to recapture control of the government, they've already told us what they're going to do. They're going to go after people like us. They're going to go after people who were loyal to President Trump. They're going to go after people who were loyal to America. And those people are going to face the full weight of the lawfare that we have seen in play throughout the 4 years of the fake Biden administration. It's going to be worse. It's going to be much, much worse. And if these people don't wake up and they do not deliver on what needs to be delivered, then it's going to get messy. Mark my words. There's no way around it. People are already up in arms. They are already pissed. Maybe they need to be more pissed. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe people need to give a bigger voice to the fact that they are not happy with what's going on in Washington, D.C. There's a reason they call it the swamp, and the swamp protects the swamp. Now, let's talk about that swamp. This is a story that came out yesterday in Town Hall, and a 30-minute undercover video was released, which shows that in Ohio, where we certainly are currently uncovering millions of dollars in immigrant and illegal alien fraud in the same way they've uncovered in Minnesota, in Maine, in Washington, in California. One of the ways you can rest assured that you can go ahead and engage in whatever fraud you want is by buying an immigration judge to ensure that you're going to be able to stick around. Now, this video released by Town Hall shows immigration judges in Ohio immigration courts, being bribed to keep illegal aliens in the United States. So the video sheds light on something that I would imagine many of us believed was happening, but the amount of money that's changing hands is pretty heavy. So they are allowing this underground business of smuggling illegal aliens into the United States. They're helping them get jobs and then bribing immigration judges so that the ruling is in the favor of the illegal aliens. So a woman identified as Patricia Golder claims in the video that she takes some of the money given to West African migrants in exchange for her bribing judges to rule in their favor. The undercover reporter was introduced to Golder by a woman named Cindy Reese. She gets them their papers. She does, Reese told the reporter as she introduced him to Patricia Golder. She said he knows about Mulberry Street. Mulberry Street is apparently one of these places where they are housing these illegal immigrants. I tried to work with them the best I can, Golder said. Golder then tells the reporter that some of these migrants have papers and some of them don't. She said she actually helps illegals get jobs, but would not name any of the companies because of the threat of ICE. Well, if these companies are named, then obviously they're going to need to have charges pressed against them as well. And then in the video, Golder describes how she visits judges at bars and restaurants, visits them in public places so she can go ahead and bribe them. If I can get to the judge, that's the only person you want to talk to is the judge. Wait, say that again, the reporter says. If I can get to the judge, it's okay. I make conversation with them. If the judge says, yeah, okay, $50,000, and I send everyone to you. I go to the bar like every day to drink. I spot the judge. I say, do you work on this date? He's like, let me see my calendar. Now give me $50,000, she said. The judge says that, the reporter asked in disbelief. He ain't scared of nothing. How they live, they pay the bills just like you and me. Come on, man. So this footage includes these allegations that migrants are also being coached on how to navigate the asylum system by the people who are ostensibly supposed to be protecting the asylum system and the United States of America. They get encouraged to fabricate claims so that they can meet the legal threshold, and they are informed, according to sources on the ground, that favorable rulings can be secured through bribery, through illicit means. These claims point to systemic vulnerabilities that make the immigration system susceptible to abuse and corruption. And Patricia Golder is at the center of it. In this footage, shows that the alleged manipulation of the asylum process has become her number one business. Golder takes a portion of the pay given to the Mauritanian migrants in exchange for helping them navigate the system, and she claims she can bribe judges to rule in their favor. It also suggests that many of the migrants involved neither embrace nor ever intend to adopt the core American values, even as they publicly access resources designed to protect legitimate asylum seekers. Now, again, this video is roughly 30 minutes long. Is there a way? 30 minutes long, but it is damning. We're not going to watch the whole thing, but I will show you this little bit at the beginning.
I can help the newcomers, the people from Mauritania.
Oh, we got them all here too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. See,
did you guys are the ones that kind of took care of them?
Yeah.
Oh, bless you.
Oh. My best friend, she dated one. So
they've been here for a little while now, I understand.
Maybe a year or so.
Oh my gosh,
they've been populating over here.
You guys been able to handle that?
First it was overwhelming, but now we can.
How's your friend's boyfriend adapting?
He's staying with us right now. But see, he has his own place too. Mm-hmm. He's got a place with 4 or 5 other guys that he pays his part of the rent for, but he comes and stays with her.
Right. That's on Mulberry, maybe.
Yes. Lachlan is, I call it Little Africa. Mm-hmm. I call it Little Africa.
Right.
Because they stand out everywhere. They're all over the place.
Right.
And well, I mean,
some of them have paper, some don't. Some of them don't have paper.
Okay.
She can.
And what we could do for the one that we don't have paperwork, we get it like cash.
Okay.
And then, like we can ask the organization and say they volunteer.
Say that again. Oh, say that they're volunteering.
And say they volunteer, but you pay them.
I hope there's other people.
All right, so I can see that people are already saying in the chat, ICE and the federal government better be investigating this. I guarantee you that they are. There is no way that a story like this is going to come out, and at the same time, it wouldn't have been directly delivered to the administration. But every single corrupt immigration judge, every single individual who has made a business out of this pipeline of illegal aliens, bringing them in wherever they might be, in any state in this union, they need to pay the maximum penalty. They need to be put in prison. They need to get shut down. And the corrupt immigration judges need to go first. All right. Now, Thank you very much to Sean. No thanks, Joe, actually. No thanks, Joe says, thank you, Lisa and Zach. Happy hump day. Thank you for your very hard work. God bless and stay safe. You as well, my friend. Thank you to Sean Joe for the can, the cookie, and the cookie. Thank you to Good Dog 45 for the can. Thank you to Filter Dog, who says, was Trump's speech at Davos the historic shift? I think it is. It absolutely was, my friend, 100%. Also, thank you to Sean Joe for 2 more cookies. And Filter Dog says, California Governor Newsom was informed at the 11th hour that his Davos talk was canceled. Yes, we will talk about that in just a few minutes. Real quick, before we do, I have a very quick message from our friends over here on a Rumble. All right, you guys. Parents, real talk for a second America is about to hit a huge milestone. We are coming up on America's 250th birthday. 250 years of freedom, grit, sacrifice, and the greatest experiment in self-government that the world has ever known. This is the perfect moment to help your kids understand why the country matters, not just fireworks and hot dogs, but the story behind all of it. There's a free guide called The Kid's Guide to America's 250th Birthday, and it's honestly a great way to introduce kids to how America began, who the founding fathers were, what they risked, and why the ideas they fought for still matter today. This guide sends kids back to the moment when the brave men signed the Declaration of Independence, knowing full well they were risking their lives for freedom. It breaks it all down in a way a kid can actually understand and enjoy without watering it down or turning it into boring schoolwork. If you care about raising kids who know where this country came from and why it's worth preserving, this is something you'll want to grab. And the best part, it's completely free. With this special offer, you just need to pay the $2 for the shipping and handling. So just head to freeusabirthday.com. Once again, that's freeusabirthday.com and get the Kid's Guide to America's 250th birthday for your children or grandchildren today. America's story matters. Make sure the next generation knows it. You can also use that QR code on screen or the link you're going to see in the chat or down below this video. Thank you very much. Also, thank you to Moon Baby 0437 who says, thanks for the news, Zach. Thank you. Thank you as well. All right. Now, in relation to Minnesota and the violation of the Enforcement Act and the violation of the FACE Act that we saw this past weekend, and most importantly, the network of paid agitators that travel all around this country and cause havoc and impede the operations of ICE and stop the federal agents that need to be out there doing the work to get these illegals off the street. Those people, according to John Solomon, are going to begin being arrested this month. Indictments are indictments are right around the corner, John Solomon says. And as far as anybody who is a mainstream or a mainstream-ish reporter, I think John Solomon is as solid as it gets. Take a listen.
I think this could have indictments or arrests as early as this month, based on my reporting, is they're looking at who is funding these protests, who is obstructing ICE, who are the funders, the orchestrators, the facilitators of these riots and these efforts to impede lawful enforcement. I think that could be the first sign of indictments, that we could see arrests and indictments as early as the end of this month, based on the activity I'm seeing in the field. I think this could.
And today is the 21st, all right? So we've got 10 days until the end of the month. We already know that ICE and the federal government, the FBI, DHS, they have been mapping the networks of these paid protesters, and every single person they've arrested at any of the federal buildings, any of them that they've arrested, anybody they have detained, they have taken their phones. They have taken their phones. If they charge them, they take all the data from their phones and they give the phones back within 72 hours. If they don't charge them, they're still holding the phones for up to 6 months. During that time, they are also getting into those phones. They are using that data to map out their travel, their itineraries, the flow of money in and out of accounts, and also all of their communications with whomever it is that they have had communications to conspire with about their travels. And most importantly, they're going to use this information to find out what big sources of money are coming in and keeping these people afloat as they don't work, as they essentially make a living traveling around the country and engaging in these paid protests and insurrectionist activities, to coin a phrase. But John Solomon says 10 days, definitely going to be keeping an eye on this. Now, I would expect perhaps charges even quicker than that for the people that we saw entering the church over the weekend. Let me say thank you to Buck Wayne, who says military courts have no obligation to report to the press or general public details of any ongoing investigations or trials. Just because we don't see it doesn't mean nothing is happening. Wink. And I absolutely agree with you, my friend. Yes, we are not going to hear about things like that until the moment that it's announced to the general public. All right, now we need to do a spot check on the Clintons, because today was the scheduled vote to hold them in contempt of Congress. Last night, James Comer put out this announcement. Facing contempt of Congress. Oh, also, Bowler Jack Bryan says, "You are always the best." Thank you so much for that generous donation. Really appreciate you, buddy. All right. Facing contempt of Congress, the Clintons' lawyer made an untenable offer. Of course, this is after they had already publicly stated, both of them, that for some reason they were not going to testify, simply because they didn't feel like it, simply because they were, quote, taking a stand against a fascist regime or some bullshit like that. But they wanted James Comer alone to travel to New York to have a conversation only with President Bill Clinton. Apparently, Hillary would not speak no matter what. There would be no official transcript recorded, and other members of Congress would not be allowed to participate. Well, I have rejected the Clintons' ridiculous offer, Comer said. The Clintons' latest demands make clear that they believe their name entitles them to special treatment. The House Oversight Committee's bipartisan subpoenas required the Clintons to appear for depositions that are under oath and transcribed. Former President Clinton has a documented history of parsing language to avoid questions. Anybody remember Bill Clinton's famous line? "It depends on what the definition of the word is," when asking if he had an affair with Monica Lewinsky. He responded falsely under oath, Bill Clinton, and was impeached and suspended from the practice of law as a result. I completely forgot he lost his law license. The absence of an official transcript is an indefensible demand that is insulting to the American people who demand answers about Epstein's crimes. We also demand answers about the Clintons' crimes. As part of our investigation, but of course James Comer doesn't want to give up the ghost too early. As part of our investigation, the House Oversight Committee has released transcripts of interviews with former U.S. Attorney General Bill Barr, former U.S. Secretary of Labor Alex Acosta, which has provided much-needed transparency to the public. Without a formal record, Americans would be left to rely on competing accounts of what was said. Former Secretary Clinton's on-the-record testimony is necessary for the committee's investigation, given her knowledge from her time as Secretary of State of the federal government's work to counter international sex trafficking rings, her personal knowledge of Miss Maxwell, and her family's relationship with Mr. Epstein. Contempt proceedings begin tomorrow. Now, of course, James Comer's statement there that Hillary Clinton's presence at the State Department and their work to combat international sex trafficking rings is tongue-in-cheek. He knows that Hillary Clinton's State Department had no role in combating international sex trafficking rings. In fact, during Hillary Clinton's time at the State Department famously covered up an international sex trafficking ring that was being used and abused by members of Hillary Clinton's own State Department. You saw one report that came out, I believe, on ABC. I've played it here before. I did not prepare it for today because I didn't think it was necessary. But that's what Hillary Clinton did. On top of Hillary Clinton's backroom deal-making, her quid pro quos, her payoffs to the Clinton Foundation, which of course then ended up in her own pockets, Hillary Clinton has engaged in many types of criminal behavior that need to be addressed, need to be answered for under oath. That's why Hillary Clinton doesn't want to speak under oath. Hillary Clinton doesn't want to get caught having to declare the Fifth Amendment. So the Oversight Committee, late last night, said Bill and Hillary Clinton think the rules don't apply to them. They defied subpoenas, demanded untenable special treatment, and they now face contempt of Congress. There will be no double standard, not for the Clintons, not for anyone. The Clintons' latest demand make it clear that they believe their last name entitles them to special treatment. Oh, I'm sorry. This is a rehash of the official statement that James Comer put out. Okay, so we will jump over that and go right to James Comer's opening statement early this morning as he delivered these comments in advance of the Clintons' contempt of Congress vote. Now, let me pull that up. Okay, and here it is. Just need to get past this ad real quick.
Today, the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform meets to advance two resolutions recommending that the House of Representatives find former President Bill Clinton.
Look at that. They've got Democrat member, ranking member, Representative Garcia right behind him on big poster board. No one is above the law, May 30th, 2024. And defying a congressional subpoena is highly illegal. September 5th, 2025. I love this. Their words are coming back to haunt them.
Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in contempt of Congress for refusing to comply with duly issued subpoenas. The committee does not take this action lightly. But subpoenas are not mere suggestions. They carry the force of law and require compliance. Former President Clinton and Secretary Clinton were legally required to appear for depositions before this committee. They refused. As Democrat ranking member...
That's Garcia right there. Because Comer is the ranking Republican and Garcia is the ranking Democrat.
Garcia stated, and I quote,
did you see his face? He just grimaced. He was like, oh, hold on. Take a look. Take a look on the left-hand side of the screen right there.
As Democrat ranking member Garcia stated, and I quote, defying a congressional subpoena is highly illegal, end quote. He also stated, and I quote, no one is above the law. Actions have consequences. 6 months ago, Republicans and Democrats on the House Oversight Committee's Federal Law Enforcement Subcommittee unanimously approved deposition subpoenas for the Clintons by voice vote as part of our investigation into the federal government's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell criminal cases. More than 5 months ago, I issued those bipartisan subpoenas. The Clintons' testimony is critical to understanding Epstein's sex trafficking network and the ways he sought to curry favor and influence to shield himself from scrutiny. Their testimony may also inform how Congress can strengthen laws to better combat human trafficking. Since issuing the subpoenas, this committee has acted in good faith. We've offered flexibility on scheduling. The response we received was not cooperation, but defiance, marked by repeated delays, excuses, and obstruction. The Clintons claim they have been treated unfairly because this committee accepted written statements under penalty of perjury from former U.S. Attorneys General Holder, Lynch, Sessions, and Garland, as well as former FBI Director Comey. Those written statements were accepted because none of those officials recalled information relevant to the Epstein investigation, nor did they have personal relationships with Epstein. By contrast, the committee required in-person testimony from former U.S. Attorney General Barr and former U.S. Secretary of Labor and U.S. Attorney Acosta, both Republicans, because they possessed information directly relevant to the investigation. The Clintons are in a fundamentally different category. They had documented relationships with Epstein and Maxwell, evidenced by numerous photographs, flight log records, wedding invitations, and other materials. Some of these photos can be seen here. We repeatedly informed the Clintons' attorney that written statements would not be accepted. The subpoenas required depositions. Federal courts have consistently held that witnesses may not impose their own conditions upon the manner of congressional inquiry. Yet the Clintons attempted to do exactly that, submitting brief, bulleted written statements that are neither comprehensive nor responsive to the committee's many unanswered questions. No witness, not a former president or a private citizen, may willfully defy a duly issued congressional subpoena without consequence. But that is what the Clintons did, and that is why we are here today. I would expect bipartisan support for enforcing those subpoenas by voting in favor of these resolutions. Unfortunately, it appears that Ranking Member Garcia has chosen to follow marching orders designed to distract from the issue at hand. I hope I'm wrong about this. Over the weekend, Ranking Member Garcia made clear that Democrats intend to divert attention from the Clintons by instead calling for Attorney General Bondi to be held in contempt. The difference is clear. Attorney General Bondi and the Department of Justice are producing documents. While the pace is slower than any of us would prefer and must speed up, I believe that much of the delay involves the Department of Justice trying to take care to redact victims' personal information. By contrast, the Clintons have flatly refused to appear at all, despite repeated warnings that the committee would move forward with contempt proceedings. Today, the Clintons must be held accountable for their actions, and Democrats must support these measures or they will be exposed as hypocrites.
Now, I've seen people suggesting, what is it that the Clintons are trying to run the clock out on? I'll tell you what I think they're trying to run the clock out on, because Bill Clinton has repeatedly requested in his public statements that the Department of Justice release everything they have on Bill and Hillary Clinton from the Epstein files. I think that Bill and Hillary Clinton have been waiting for the Epstein files to be fully released before they would even consider speaking to the committee, because if they don't know what's in the files, then they don't know what to lie about. But if they already have some idea of what's contained in those files, then they know how to craft their answers in the way that is best for them to avoid any criminal culpability. But as it stands right now, the exhaustive research and redactions that are being done on these 5+ million documents, and the fact that they continue to find new documents, it's been impossible for those documents to be released before Bill and Hillary Clinton were able to avoid this contempt of Congress vote. Now, we also have quite the banger of a statement coming from Representative Eli Crane, who is one of those members of Congress who I truly do respect. Let's go ahead and hear what he has to say.
Mr. Comer, how many times, Mr. Chairman, how many times did Mr. Epstein go to the White House in your recollection, sir?
According to the evidence that we've obtained, it appears he went 17 times during the Clinton presidency.
Is that more times than you've gone to the White House, Chairman?
I've been member of Congress for 9 years, and fairly high up on the pecking order. I've been to the White House, I believe, 9 times in 9 years. So he went to the Clinton White House double the number of times that I've been to the White House in my entire congressional career.
Mr. Chairman, how many times did...
It's not only about the Clinton Foundation. The Clinton Foundation is certainly part of it, because Jeffrey Epstein helped start the Clinton Foundation with the Clintons. So that opens the door to a whole host of questions about the operations of the Clinton Foundation. Then, of course, there is the aforementioned investigation that was done by Huber, the subpoenas that were sent to the Clinton Foundation, the collection of all of that paperwork that was then handed over to John Durham. Obviously, we've seen nothing result from that yet. But I would imagine, I believe, that it would end up becoming highly relevant when we get to the larger conspiracy investigation, which is currently taking place in the grand jury that's meeting down here in the Southern District of Florida.
Did Mr. Clinton fly on Mr. Epstein's plane?
At least 26 times, according to the flight logs that were subpoenaed from the estate.
Right.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Those were 4 different trips, 4 trips, and every time they regassed the plane, they counted that as another trip. But it was Asia, Africa, and they had to refuel. So every time they stopped to refuel, they counted that as another leg of the trip. There are 4 trips, not 27.
That's almost like I didn't inhale.
Reclaiming my time. That's still enough trips for us to want to be able to ask the Clintons questions about their involvement with Epstein. Is that true, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Right. So, like I said, I hope that my Democrat colleagues who all of a sudden have found religion this Congress, and now they want the Epstein files, even though over the last 4 years when they had control of Washington, D.C., you didn't hear a peep about Jeffrey Epstein out of any of them. And so I think it's going to be real telling, how my Democrat colleagues who claim to be all about the victims, how they actually vote on these contempt charges for the Clinton family. And I just think it's interesting, too, that, Mr. Chairman, my understanding is you've been working for the last 4 or 5 months to get the Clintons in here. Is that correct?
5 months, yes, sir.
Did they tell you that they would come in over December 24th and 25th, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day?
They have implied that they would come in, yes.
Okay, so that just goes to show that they're trying to dodge suggesting dates that they know none of us are in session. And I think that's pretty despicable.
Of course, nobody is going to be there to take their deposition on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. What a joke. All right. So the House Oversight Committee did vote, and yes, the Clintons have been charged with criminal contempt of Congress for defying those congressional subpoenas. So how did the vote shake out? Well, 9 Democrats joined with the Republicans. The vote was 38-4. Recommending to hold Bill Clinton in contempt. 3 Democrats joined with the Republicans. It was 28-15-1, who I guess abstained, to hold Hillary Clinton in contempt. So now both Bill and Hillary Clinton have been found in contempt of Congress. Their votes, the Democrat votes, underscored the continued pressure that Democrats are under to remain consistent in their calls for transparency and accountability. Of course, they don't really want transparency or accountability, but it shouldn't matter. Democrat, Republican, man, woman, dog, or beast. If they are doing illegal things, then we should be able to hold those people accountable. So Republicans were successful in their efforts to get the Clintons to be held in contempt. By voting to hold them in contempt, the committee sent a clear message: no one is above the law. Justice must be applied equally, regardless of your position, pedigree, or prestige. These were bipartisan subpoenas for the Clintons. They were approved unanimously, and they were over 5 months old. They were legally required to appear, and instead they responded to their good faith negotiations with defiance, delay, and obstruction. So the committee is taking the necessary steps to arrest the Clintons and hold them to account. What happens next remains to be seen. I haven't seen anything like this since the contempt votes for Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon. But if that is any indication of what we're going to see, the Department of Justice will now be involved. Now, also on the subject of Jeffrey Epstein, the former lawyer for Barack Hussein Obama, Catherine Rumler, who was the surprise #1 guest appearance in the recently revealed Epstein emails, who is, of course, working for Goldman Sachs, is likely going to be fired. She appeared in literally hundreds of emails with Jeffrey Epstein, joking around about the fact that Jeffrey Epstein liked young girls. She met him dozens of times. She's mentioned in scores of additional emails between the late pedophile and his team. Now, Goldman Sachs is closely taking a look at this situation after the revelation that Jeffrey Epstein was already a convicted pedophile when Catherine Rumler was good friends with him. And he knew her favorite sushi and avocado rolls orders by heart. That means that they would go out to eat quite frequently. He also visited apartments she was considering buying and asked his assistant to check whether Rumler could get a first-class upgrade. The disgraced financier and child sex trafficker also listed former counsel for Barack Hussein Obama as a backup executor for his will, which, of course, raises a number of ethical questions for Goldman Sachs. I don't even have a will yet myself, but I'll tell you who I am not going to have even considered to appear on there. Anybody who's associated with a pedophile, and certainly not a lawyer for Barack Hussein Obama. The depth of this friendship was fully revealed for the first time in the emails, and apparently it took the bosses at Goldman Sachs by surprise. I would imagine that if anybody ever asked Catherine Rummler about her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, she probably downplayed it quite a bit. So the Wall Street Journal is reporting that a plan has been devised to remove Catherine Rummler from the company. Catherine Rummler is a anchor around the neck of Goldman Sachs. Rummler told the Wall Street Journal, "It was my job to engage with people and companies that had serious legal and public relations problems. Many were under criminal investigations, and many had been convicted of crimes." Well, in that case, I would like to get a look at Catherine Rummler's emails. Let's see who else she was involved in. What is this right here?
One of the most powerful people in the Epstein files is somebody you may not have heard of. Her name.
Well, we've all heard of Kathy Rummler. Rummler said she had not represented Epstein, but that he informally reached out to me for advice from time to time, just as he did with numerous other prominent lawyers throughout the country. Why would you continue to have a relationship with somebody like Jeffrey Epstein if they were not paying you money to speak with them? The only thing that makes sense to me is that Catherine Rummler was fully unbothered by the fact that he was a convicted pedophile and a sex offender. Also seemingly unbothered by his casual offhand remarks about liking young women in the ways that he did. Now, Epstein also referred clients to her, she added. So obviously, Jeffrey Epstein, with his blackmail handbook, he had connections to powerful people all over the place. Catherine Rummler was making a handsome profit off of her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, and now it's coming back to bite her in the ass. Emails also released by the House Oversight Committee show just how close that relationship was. In September of 2014, he wrote, well, and remember, this is while she was working for Barack Hussein Obama. He wrote to her, "You need to talk to boss," meaning Barack Hussein Obama. She replied, "Agreed, but I need to be prepared to say yes before I talk to him." Understood, Epstein said. It comes down to the high risk reward, low risk reward, professional, emotional, and financial. And here is one of those comments. She responded that most girls do not have to worry about this crap. Epstein shot back, "Girls? Careful, I will renew an old habit." Yeah. She referred to herself as a girl, and Epstein was comfortable enough to make jokes about being a pedophile. There were hundreds of emails between Catherine Rummler and Jeffrey Epstein, making it appear that perhaps Bill Clinton was not the only president that Jeffrey Epstein had. Leave me your AR. I will have enough to leave to many different people. Hey, would you blow me? That's funny. Yeah, many different presidents Jeffrey Epstein apparently had relationships with. All right, now we're going to transition to Davos. Last night, as President Trump was attempting to fly out to Davos, Air Force One made a sudden U-turn over the Atlantic, and it was just as it passed Long Island, about less than an hour after President Trump had departed for Davos, Switzerland. You can see here on the flight tracker, he took off from the Washington, D.C. area and then flew out into the Atlantic and then turned around right there. There was a couple of minutes of concern among supporters of President Trump online, and the White House told reporters there was some type of minor electrical issue which prompted President Trump to turn back. Then he boarded another plane at Joint Base Andrews for the trip to Davos. The flight that he was originally taking was one of the old Air Force Ones, and the plane that he transferred to was one of the new Air Force Ones that was given to him by, I believe, Saudi Arabia, or maybe it was Abu Dhabi. I can't remember exactly who it was that gave him those brand new planes. Qatar. That was it, Qatar. All right, here, let's take a look at President Trump right here. I think this is him getting on the new Air Force One. Now, I will say every single time there is an issue with Air Force One, or there's, some type of seeming problem when President Trump is the air, everybody gets very, very nervous because obviously if you want to take somebody out, you make their plane crash. A lot of people are very concerned about that. But
I do have to say, I think that President Trump is surrounded by an incredible team, and that every single time he goes up in the air, there are probably a series of checks that many of us would not even think about to ensure that this, whatever plane he's taking, is entirely safe. Now, this is a piece of footage that Nick Sorter shared last night, which showed a caravan of law enforcement vehicles rushing to Joint Base Andrews after President Trump was forced to turn around. So that happened before we got word that everything was fine. And again, all they have said is a minor electrical issue. Could have been as simple as a light bulb not working, or perhaps a switch stopped working. Or, to be perfectly frank, it could have been something that was much, much bigger. Now, the lights in the press cabin from the press pool, they're saying that the lights went out briefly after takeoff, but they never gave the press pool any type of an explanation. Caroline Leavitt said that once they got on the Qatari jet, things were much, much better because it's a newer plane. It has all of the modern bells and whistles that make it far safer and more comfortable ride. And then they made their way on to Zurich. All right. So CBS News reporter Ed O'Keefe reported that Air Force One landed safely at around 11 p.m. There was a list of administration officials such as Marco Rubio, Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, James Blair, Bo Harrison, Stephen Miller, Robert Gabriel, Stephen Chung, Kevin Hassett, Caroline Leavitt, Will Scharf, Ross Worthington, and Ambassador Monica Crowley that were all traveling with him. All right. And then just after midnight, President Trump was wheels up again for Davos. The White House press pool reported that the president boarded the new jet, but reporters didn't witness him getting off the old plane and boarding the new one. The latest pool report said while holding on original Air Force One, your pool saw a lot of commotion, including several staffers deplaning with their bags, including Caroline Leavitt and Kevin Hassett. The crew on the plane was hustling to make that transition, quickly moving boxes of fruit, wrapped sandwiches and beverages, things like that. At least one ran past the press cabin. Others on the ground outside were seen pulling up about a dozen suitcases off the plane and then placing them onto a truck. Fox News was playing on the TVs with a chyron about the plane's electrical issue, and the replacement Air Force One was a smaller Boeing 757, took off at 12:02, and they made their way to Davos. Now, as I said yesterday, Scott Bessent was present in Davos prior to President Trump arriving. And Filter Dog was correct. Gavin Newsom was denied entrance to the hall that was being controlled by the United States of America. I don't even understand why Gavin Newsom was there. Yesterday, he also made a very odd statement about President Trump. He was basically talking to a series of a European press pool. And he was telling Europe that they need to do more to stand up to President Trump and that it's embarrassing to see the world kneeling. He said, you would think that the leaders of Europe need a new pair of knee pads because of President Trump. And he also said that President Trump is like he's like a T-Rex. You either mate with him or he devours you. Hold on. So I made a series of videos. Oh, dang it. Okay. No, that's not one of them. Anyways, I made a bunch of videos of President Trump turning into a Tyrannosaurus Rex. I'll have to pull those up off my phone later. But a lot of fun with that. Anyways, so when Gavin Newsom got essentially banned from the USA Hall, Scott Bessent had some key words for him, and he totally bodied him by comparing him to both Patrick Bateman and Sparkle. What did he say? He said Sparkle Ken. Hold on just a second. And he said that Gavin Newsom was there with his sugar daddy, Alex Soros, which is hilarious.
Very, very ironic that, Governor Newsom, who strikes me as Patrick Bateman meets Sparkle Beach Ken.
If you don't know who Patrick Bateman is the main character from American Psycho, which they made into a movie starring Christian Bale like 20 plus years ago. The book is insane. The movie is great. And you may not like it, but it's a character study of a guy who is a Wall Street broker in the 1980s who is slowly going insane. And he thinks that he is a serial killer. But then at the end, well, I won't spoil the end for you in case you want to see it. But he is insane. And that's the thing. He is a psychopathic narcissist. And he looks just like Gavin Newsom.
Ironic that, Governor Newsom, who strikes me as Patrick Bateman meets Sparkle Beach Ken, may be the only Californian who knows less about economics than Kamala Harris. He's here this week with his billionaire sugar daddy, Alex Soros. And Davos is a perfect place for a man who, when everyone else was on lockdown, when he was having people arrested for going to church, he was having $1,000 a night meals at the French Laundry. And I'm sure the California people won't forget that. And I can tell my message to Governor Newsom is the Trump administration is coming to California. We are going to crack down on waste, fraud, and abuse. And I was told he was asked to give a speech on his signature policies, but he's not speaking. Because what have his economic policies brought? Outward migration from California, a gigantic budget deficit, the largest homeless population in America, and the poor folks in the Palisades who had their homes burned down. He is here hobnobbing with the global elite while his California citizens are still homeless. Shame on him. He is too smug, too self-absorbed, and too economically illiterate to know anything.
I love Scott Bessent. Perfect takedown of Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom is the worst example of American politics today. And here we go. This is Gavin Newsom versus Patrick Bateman. Take a look. There's Gavin Newsom. There is Patrick Bateman in American Psycho. They are quite literally the spitting image of each other. Gavin Newsom cannot pass a mirror without turning, looking, smiling, and then touching himself as he takes a look at just how handsome he is. All right, and then I think that somebody made a tweet with Sparkle Ken. Yeah, oh my God. They probably did this with Grok. Alexander Soros and Gavin Newsom dressed up as Sparkle Ken. Oh my God, that is too funny, too funny. All right. Now, sticking with Davos, this is the CEO of Citadel, and he is discussing on stage at the World Economic Forum before President Trump was there and before he spoke about the chasm of difference between the Biden administration and the Trump administration. And this is not the only time this happened. There's a couple of great clips of people who would normally go to the World Economic Forum and talk about how they could defeat President Trump. But now, as a result of having this 1 year of perfect record, like comparing and contrasting those two administrations, it's night and day. And you can't deny the incredible progress we've made.
You cannot imagine how painful it was each and every day under the Biden administration to look at what new crazy proposal was being put into place to solve a problem that didn't even exist. I mean, our constant friction at Citadel with the government across umpteen different aspects of our business was exhausting. And to have that literally end on one day, Election Day, just gives you so much energy as an entrepreneur to go back and build your damn business. So the biggest sea change I've seen across American executives has been just like the giant sigh of relief. I can now go and focus on building my business. And that prior administration, we happen to be a creditor of Spirit. Their merger with JetBlue was stopped. Spirit's in bankruptcy today. There were so many decisions that were so poorly thought out in terms of economic consequences. It cost the U.S. economy dearly. I cannot emphasize that enough. And so the Trump administration is making slow progress on deregulation thus far, But the end of the regulatory onslaught has been just an extraordinary boom for American business.
Yes, bringing about the foundation for that golden age. Now, I saw somebody suggest also, President Trump, Operation Warp Speed, Anthony Fauci. Let me just say that President Trump has also laid the foundation for the prosecution of Anthony Fauci. The people that he's put in at Health and Human Services have been slowly exposing the dangers of not only the COVID clot shot, but also so many other shots that many people have been forced to get in one form or another over the years. By taking Anthony Fauci's pardon away from him through the dissolution of anything signed by Joe Biden with the auto pen, he has made it possible for justice to be brought to Anthony Fauci. And just as was said so succinctly earlier, just because you don't hear about something happening doesn't mean that it's not going to. I believe that Anthony Fauci will be brought to justice. Until that time, feel free to remain discontented. However, I believe that this is exactly what we're going to see. Now, with what Jamie Dimon from Chase Bank, or Chase, whatever the parent company is, Chase, he is also talking about the failures of globalism and the failures of governments, big government, creating bureaucracy to siphon taxes out of people and destroy their wealth. And the woman who is leading this panel is the same one that was being spoken to by the CEO of Citadel. She tries to stop him. She gets really uncomfortable. But Jamie Dimon keeps talking.
It work better for everybody. And
would you raise taxes to pay for that?
I don't think you'd have to. I think it would drive a lot of growth. I think I did the numbers at one point. It'd be $60 billion of spending. I think it would probably create more than that of growth and taxes. And if you have to raise taxes a little bit, that's fine. But again, I don't want to have the binary argument. I don't know anyone, okay, and you guys in the room, you might be Democrats, Republicans, who thinks the spending that sending another $1 trillion to Washington, D.C. will actually improve anything. So when you say raise taxes, if you said raise
and people started laughing, which means that they know he's right.
Taxes and directly give it to the people who need it, I do it. No,
so
but that's not what happens.
We are running out of time.
It goes to all these interest groups.
She tries to stop him. We're running out of time because he starts saying, it doesn't go to the people. It goes to special interest groups.
And they give it to their friends and all that. And which is why the people consider it a swamp. It's kind of a swamp. There's 17,000 lobbying groups. But bank companies are guilty too. They're just fighting for their one self-interest as opposed to what's good for my country. But that's what happens in Congress. And you see how these bills get spent. Like the CHIPS Act was a good idea until it had to be unions, place-based, child care, diapers. What the hell are we doing? And we do it over and over, and then it fails, and then we spend more money because the problem is we didn't spend enough money.
Because we didn't spend enough money in the first place. That was the narrative that was over and over and over again. This is what President Trump is doing away with. Continuing here, we have the NATO's Mark Rutte. NATO, obviously, is one of those global governance organizations that has become less and less relevant. However, it has also been saved as a result of President Trump.
And here's my question to
forcing the nations of Europe to start paying their fair share, allowing the United States to take a step back. Now, Mark Rutte from NATO admonishes the crowd for their criticism of Donald Trump.
And here's my question to the audience. I mean, many of you I know criticize Donald Trump. But do you really think that without Donald Trump, 8 big economies in Europe, including Spain and Italy and Belgium, Canada, by the way, also outside Europe, would have come to 2% in 2025 when they were only on 1.5% at the beginning of the year? No way. Without Donald Trump, this would never have happened. They're all on 2% now. Do you really think that in the summit in The Hague, as already Alex was saying, the president of Finland was saying, that, and here's my question.
Donald Trump is the only reason that things are changing. They had no reason to want to change before. They had no reason to not want to continue to siphon money out of America. The wealth of America was for decades transitioned from our pockets into the pockets of European globalists and many other nations around the world. Not to the benefit of the United States, to the detriment of the United States. Now, here is President Trump walking out onto the stage at Davos, and the reaction he gets from the crowd is very different from the reaction that he has gotten at any other World Economic Forum when he took the stage. Full house, standing ovation. Everybody's got their phones out because they want to get pictures of the boss. They're clapping. They're celebrating his arrival. And I think they all know they're going to get their asses smacked. There's a newfound respect for the United States. Now, of course, one of the major things that President Trump spoke about during the course of his speech at Davos was the U.S. acquiring Greenland. Now, during this speech, he demanded immediate negotiations to acquire Greenland. He called out NATO for being ungrateful because if it wasn't for the United States, NATO wouldn't exist. The European nations would not have the safety and security they're afforded today if it were not for the United States. He also called out Denmark. He said, we're a great power, and they found that out 2 weeks ago in Venezuela. So he said the United States is treated very unfairly by NATO. I want to tell you that. When you think about it, nobody can dispute it. We give so much, and we get so little in return. I've been a critic of NATO for many years, and yet I've done more to help NATO than any other president, by far, than any other person. You wouldn't have NATO if I didn't get involved in my first term, and the war with Ukraine is an example. He also called out Denmark for being disrespectful, for being ungrateful. He said he has great respect and love of the people of Denmark and the people of Greenland, but it was the United States that helped Denmark secure Greenland at the end of World War II. We saved Greenland. We successfully prevented our enemies from gaining a foothold in our hemisphere. We did it for ourselves as well. And then after the war, which we won it big. Without us right now, you'd all be speaking German and a little Japanese, perhaps. After the war, we gave Greenland back to Denmark. How stupid were we to do that? He also said that after his speech, he was going to be meeting with NATO Secretary Mark Rutte and various interested parties because he needs to talk to them about acquiring Greenland. He said, of course, it's imperative for the nation and the world to be secure for the United States to have Greenland. Rutte expressed his commitment to finding a way forward on Greenland so that we don't have to do something like dissolve NATO outright. Our country and the world face much greater risks than we ever did before because of missiles, nuclear, because of weapons of warfare that I can't even talk about. They saw weapons that nobody had ever heard of, weapons of warfare that I can't even talk about. Now, I want to play that clip for you, President Trump talking about Venezuela, because as much as President Trump was up there talking about how much we need Greenland to keep the America and the world safe, he also wanted to remind everybody just how powerful we are. What are you up against? You are negotiating with the greatest power on planet Earth, and you all need to remember it.
So now our country and the world face much greater risks than it did ever before because of missiles, because of nuclear, because of weapons of warfare that I can't even talk about. 2 weeks ago, they saw weapons that nobody ever heard of. They weren't able to fire one shot at us. They said, what happened? Everything was discombobulated. They said, we've got him in our sights. Press the trigger, and nothing happened. No anti-aircraft missiles went up. There was one that went up about 30 feet and crashed down right next to the people that sent it. They said, what the hell is going on? Those defensive systems were made by Russia and by China. So they're going to go back to the drawing boards, I guess.
So, very interesting statement from President Trump there, because he gives us a little bit more of an insight into what actually happened in Venezuela. Of course, we heard about that directed energy weapon, something akin to a Havana syndrome weapon, which gave people some really terrible physical symptoms, causing them to start spewing blood from their nose, puking blood, completely incapacitating them, forcing them to drop to the ground. That is, however, the first time we've heard that there was some aspect of the weapons that we used which completely disabled anything that the people on the ground, namely the Cuban guards of Nicolas Maduro, would even be able to use their weapons. They couldn't fire a bullet. What kind of a weapon is going to incapacitate a mechanical weapon like a gun? What kind of weapon is going to cause all of their electronics to go out? Was it simply some type of a directed EMP? I don't know. But President Trump is hinting at the fact that we have many different things at our disposal that nobody has any idea about. So, as I mentioned yesterday, President Trump also talked about the fact that in 2019, Denmark said they were going to spend $200 million to strengthen Greenland and the defenses, namely because the United States has bases there and Denmark has done nothing to invest in Greenland. But they only spent about 1% of that. And they were demanding immediate negotiations with the United States to get us to spend more money. But he said it's the United States alone that can protect this giant mass of land, this giant piece of ice, develop it, improve it, make it so that it's good for Europe and safe for Europe and good for us. So, continuing here, President Trump on stage said for the first time, even though we've been threatening the possible use of military force, and as I said yesterday, both Greenland was warning their citizens about a U.S. invasion, Canada was doing war games, preparing to get their asses trounced by a U.S. invasion, President Trump said on stage that we are not going to take Greenland by force. But we could if we want to, and that's important to remember.
Here. Yes, he's here. Hello, Mark.
Talking to Mark Carney right there. He had some direct comments for Carney, for Emmanuel Macron, basically smacked Emmanuel Macron from the stage and said, why would I even need to talk to Emmanuel? He's not going to be there much longer. I like the guy, but he's not going to be in power. So there's nothing that I can do to make a deal with him.
We never asked for anything, and we never got anything. We probably won't get anything unless I decide to use excessive strength and force, where we would be, frankly, unstoppable. But I won't do that. Okay? Now everyone's saying, oh, good. That's probably the biggest statement I made, because people thought I would use force. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force. All the United States is asking for is a place called Greenland, where we already had it as a trustee, but respectfully returned it back to Denmark not long ago after we defeated the Germans, the Japanese, the Italians, and others in World War II. We gave it back to them. We were a powerful force then, but we are a much more powerful force now. After I rebuilt the military in my first term and continue to do so today, we have a budget of $1.5 trillion. We're bringing...
Nobody else has anything close to what the United States can deliver. And it's only because of us that all of those European nations exist. Now, here is President Trump calling out Mark Carney. He also gave about a 10-minute address where he warned about the current state of the world and how things are falling apart. I'll tell you what, the only thing that's falling apart is these global systems that have been run by the cabal to be replaced by President Trump and his vision for a peaceful, united world of sovereign nations who take care of their own people, which is the only thing they ever should have been doing.
All we want from Denmark for national and international security and to keep our very energetic and dangerous potential enemies at bay is this land on which we're going to build the greatest golden dome ever built. We're building a golden dome that's going to, just by its very nature, going to be defending Canada. Canada gets a lot of freebies from us, by the way. They should be grateful also, but they're not. I watched your Prime Minister yesterday. He wasn't so grateful. But they should be grateful to us. Canada lives because of the United States. Remember that, Mark, the next time you make your statements.
Watch your mouth. Keep my country's name out your mother effing mouth, Mark Carney.
What we did for Israel was amazing, but that's nothing compared to what we have planned for the United States, Canada, and the rest of the world. We are going to build a dome like no other. We did it. We did it for Israel. I mean, all we want.
When we acquire Greenland, Canada will benefit in the same way that all of these other nations will benefit. Now, hilariously, the president of Finland was asked by a panel questioner at the WEF whether or not the country could defend itself without America, whether or not Europe could defend themselves without America. And within the span of this series of questions, he gave two completely opposing answers. Listen very carefully.
Something of urgency. Who needs to come up with the plan B and lead the charge?
Well, I mean, two answers. First is a direct answer to the question of this panel: can Europe defend itself? My answer is unequivocally yes.
Without the Americans?
Without the Americans, I mean...
How?
Well, look...
But you're relying on them for these key elements. How would you do it at scale and at duration and at intensity?
With an assumption that the United States would cut off completely any kind of work.
Yeah.
Well, if we look at the defense composure of Europe by and large, and a country like Finland, so how do we do it? We have conscription. 1 million have done it. We can mobilize 280,000 soldiers within weeks. We have 62 F-18s. Your next question is going to be, do they fly without Americans? No, they don't. But
they don't even have the ability to fly the planes that the United States has sold them. So the answer is truly no. They would not be able to defend themselves without the United States. President Trump has created a system by which the United States is integral. And through that integral system, President Trump in the United States, can impose upon the world the pressure necessary to get what needs to be gotten.
Do we trust that they will continue to fly because it's in the interest of America to do so? Yes. We just bought 64 F-35s. We have the biggest artillery in Europe together with Poland. We have long-range missiles, land, sea, and air.
Also, which I believe must be run by the United States. Keeping in mind, once again, that Scott Bessent and others within the administration have already come out and said the United States has no interest in getting involved in the wars of other nations, despite the fact that we have given them weapons or sold them weapons that can only be used with the assistance of America. They are there, should they be necessary. But they won't be necessary. And the United States is not going to co-sign on wars that don't need to happen. The Board of Peace is going to ensure that those things never take place.
We don't have this because we're worried about Stockholm, right? So the bottom line is that if you ask me the question that can the Finnish military defend itself against a Russian attack, the whole defense posture of the way in which you do it, yes, we can. But then the second...
Now, later, she repeats what he said, that Finland and Europe could defend themselves without the United States. And he corrects her and he says, well, I actually didn't say that. No, that's exactly what you said. And then you immediately went on to describe exactly how it would be impossible for you to be able to defend yourselves. Now, it gets worse for NATO and for those European countries, because yesterday, before President Trump even made his way to Davos, the United States began to draw down their place in NATO, because if we're not going to get what we want from NATO and the rest of the world, then we're not going to continue to support them. So this is all related to Greenland, but the United States began to roll back their consequential support of NATO, pulling out of our bases. Obviously, we've already drawn back the amount of money that we give them, and this is all part of the negotiating process to get NATO and Denmark to agree to give us Greenland, or in some small part to give us Greenland. So the Pentagon was preparing to eliminate roughly 200 American military positions that were embedded in NATO, both in the command and in advisory bodies, and these personnel cuts would affect several of this alliance's most influential planning centers, which includes intelligence sharings, special operations, and maritime command structures. So these reductions will be carried out primarily by declining to replace American officers as their assignments end, rather than simply withdrawing them abruptly. So modest in raw numbers, these cuts will significantly reduce America's role inside the decision-making architecture of NATO. Now, among the entities that will be impacted are the NATO Intelligence Fusion Center in the United Kingdom, the Allied Special Operations Forces Command in Brussels, and Strike Force NATO, which is in Portugal. That coordinates the maritime operations. So in total, roughly half of the American personnel assigned to these bodies are now being removed. American forces posture in Europe will technically remain near 80,000 troops, which is just above the threshold that would require congressional approval for deeper reductions. This move by the administration reflects a long-standing argument that Europe must take responsibility for their own defense, and if they don't, they ought to stop lecturing America and start acting like start acting like a global player. Now, Pentagon officials allegedly have privately told European diplomats that America expects Europe to assume the bulk of conventional defense capabilities. That means intelligence, missile defense, and logistics. They've got to do it all themselves by 2027. And this is a timeline that European leaders admit is unrealistic. Because going back to my prior statement, without America, Europe does not have the ability to defend itself. The personnel cuts also align with the newly released American National Security Strategy that was released by President Trump and the administration. We are now prioritizing the Western Hemisphere over Europe. That document explicitly calls for the reallocation of American military resources closer to home, because we've got to worry about border security. We've got to worry about the cartel violence. We've got to worry about the stability within our own hemisphere. And we are no longer going to be taking care of strategy for Europe and those nations. Underlying that shift is President Trump's growing skepticism of NATO itself. President Trump reshared a message on social media on Truth Social recently, labeling NATO a threat to American interests while dismissing China and Russia as an exaggerated boogeyman, which they are, and they are also part of the Sovereign Alliance. This is a sentiment that has predictably enraged European officials. For them, they need those boogeymen to exist as the primary antagonist for the reason that NATO even exists. And they also need the United States of America to continue behaving as if Russia and China are the biggest threats on the global stage. This drawdown is following this dispute over Greenland, which President Trump has described as vital for American security. This strategic necessity in an era of great power politics and expanding Russia and Chinese activity in the Arctic should make sense to the European nations. I mean, they are posturing as if Russia and China are the greatest threat to their sovereignty. So why is it necessary for us to protect Europe from China and Russia, but not to protect ourselves in our own hemisphere? Well, they need to get on board. And it would appear that after President Trump's speech and a meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte and, of course, the leadership of Denmark and Greenland, they have come to an agreement. President Trump has made the historic deal to acquire, at least in part, Greenland as he sits at the World Economic Forum. But it's not just for Greenland. This is now a framework for the United States to control the entire Arctic region. So President Trump released a statement after meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte in Davos to discuss the United States' acquisition of Greenland from Denmark. He also announced that he was planning to meet NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte ahead of time, along with those various interested parties, for the planned acquisition of Greenland, which, of course, we have described as an imperative. Now, prior to that meeting, he had, of course, savaged Greenland and Denmark from the stage. Here he is speaking ahead of that meeting. And real quick, as we're waiting for the commercial to end here, let me just remind you guys, you've probably noticed that Rumble is growing fast. It's not going to be slowing down anytime soon. They're building a real alternative to big tech that puts creators first and actually protects free speech And now you've got access to Rumble Premium. It's an easy way to upgrade your experience because with Premium, you get ad-free viewing across the platform. There's no pre-rolls, no interruptions, just the content that you came for. Plus, Premium members unlock exclusive content like bonus videos, behind-the-scenes drops, and even more from your favorite creators. Right now, Rumble is offering a $10 off deal on an annual subscription. You can pick that up by going to rumble.com/premium and use the code STUDIO at checkout. Once again, that's rumble.com/premium with the promo code STUDIO. No ads, more freedom, and the content that you actually came for. That's the deal. Use that QR code on screen or use the link that I just told you about. And here we go with President Trump.
This is my hair.
Oh, still not done. 1 second.
This is not something that they are willing to discuss. So what will those negotiations
Well, they
look
didn't
like?
tell me that, so when they tell me, because I don't like getting it secondhand. If he wants to tell me, he'll tell me that to my face.
And when will you be discussing this?
I have no idea.
When you said
I'll be discussing it with this man right here.
Mr. President,
He's frankly more important.
Mr. President, when you
The press kept telling President Trump that all of these ancillary players in Denmark and Greenland were saying that,
The
you
real
know,
reason you're stiff after sitting.
You can live a very long time.
Oh my gosh,
without
really?
getting old.
Hold on. Gosh darn it. Why did it autoplay that? Telling President Trump that they were not going to even consider the possibility of the acquisition of Greenland. But obviously, President Trump is only going to speak to the people who have the power to make those decisions. And getting past one more ad right here. People are going to ask, why don't you have Rumble Premium? I do, but on embedded videos, it doesn't recognize you have premium.
said you would remember if Denmark did not agree to a deal on Greenland. What did you mean? What are the consequences?
You'll have to figure that out for yourself. You're a smart guy.
Said you would.
So President Trump said, you either give us Greenland or not, but if you don't, we'll remember that you didn't give it to us. And obviously, that would mean that there would be consequences. Now, President Trump never says directly what those consequences are going to be. He would rather allow people to twist in the wind and essentially come to their own conclusions, because nothing's worse than what you can come up with in your own mind. Now, this meeting was announced here by President Trump on Truth Social just a couple of hours ago. And he said, based upon a very productive meeting that I have had with the Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte, we have formed the framework of a future deal with respect to Greenland and, in fact, the entire Arctic region. This solution, if consummated, will be a great one for the United States and all NATO nations. Based upon this understanding, I will not be imposing the tariffs on all NATO nations, and based upon this based upon this understanding, I will not be imposing tariffs that were scheduled to go into effect on February 1st. Again, President Trump using the tariffs as a sort of incentive for these nations to do what he really wants them to do. Additional discussions are being held concerning the Golden Dome as it pertains to Greenland. Further information will be made available as discussions progress. Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and various others as needed will be responsible for the negotiations. They will report directly to me. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Donald J. Trump, the President of the United States of America. Now, we have had some information about what that framework is going to look like. It's being leaked by people who were privy to the negotiations. So under this Greenland deal, allegedly, Denmark will give the United States sovereignty over small pockets of Greenlandic land where the United States could build military bases. Of course, this will be over and above what we've already got control over. This is coming from 3 senior officials who are familiar with the situation. So the announcement followed this meeting today where top military officers in NATO from the alliance's member states discussed a compromise where Denmark would give the United States sovereignty over small pockets of Greenlandic land where the United States could build the bases. The officials spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss a sensitive diplomatic matter, and they said that the idea was one that Mr. Rutte had been pursuing. Two of the officials who attended the meeting compared it to the United Kingdom's bases in Cyprus, which are regarded as British territory. The officials did not know if any idea was part of the framework announced by Mr. Trump. President Trump asked for comment about the deal and its contents. NATO said in a statement that negotiations between Denmark, Greenland, and the United States will go forward, aimed at ensuring that Russia and China will never gain a foothold economically or militarily in Greenland. And here is several of those bullet points from this meeting. So again, involving small pockets of land for the United States. The U.S. will also be involved in Greenland's mineral rights. There will also be a duration of the deal as an indefinite time frame, so there will be no cap on how long this is going to be for, or if the United States ever has to worry about pulling out. It will be designed to block Russian influence in Greenland. The Golden Dome will be installed. It also opens the door to the U.S.-backed infrastructure investments in Greenland. And President Trump will be able to secure land, minerals, and everything that he needs to achieve a defensive stance for the United States. So here we are, Greenland. I don't know how it's going to work out in terms of its status. Will it be a territory of the United States? Is it going to have the same structure as like the U.S. Virgin Islands or Puerto Rico or Diego Garcia, something like that? We'll find out about that. But I would imagine that as the negotiations progress, we will hear a lot more about this in the very near future. Now, also at Davos, President Trump once again directly called out the stolen 2020 election. And more than that, he also said that they are just about ready to start prosecuting people. I have to refresh.
Thousands of miles away, separated by a giant ocean. It's a war that should have never started, and it wouldn't have started if the 2020 U.S. presidential election weren't rigged. It was a rigged election.
They speak English in Greenland. They also speak Dutch, and then they speak like the native Inuit language and maybe something else.
Everybody now knows that. They found out. People will soon be prosecuted for what they did. It's probably breaking news, but it should be.
That's definitely the first time that has been directly stated by the president. People will soon be prosecuted for what they did. Put that together with what President Trump said yesterday about the findings from Nicolas Maduro and the stolen election of 2020. These go together directly. They are sister statements coming together.
It's a rigged election. Can't have rigged elections. You need strong borders, strong elections, and ideally a good president.
Oh, Danish, not Dutch. Sorry about that, Danish.
I always say it. It's breaking news, but it should be. It was a rigged election. Can't have rigged elections. You need strong borders, strong elections, and ideally a good press. I always say it. Strong borders, strong elections, free, fair elections, and a fair media. The media is terrible. It's very crooked. It's very biased, terrible. But someday it'll straighten out because it's losing all credibility. Think of it, when I went in a landslide, a giant landslide, won all 7 swing states, won the popular vote, won everything, and I only get negative press. That means that it has no credibility. And if they're going to get credibility, they're going to have to be fair. So you need a fair press. But you also need those other elements. And I inherited a terrible, terrible situation. If you look, the border was open, the inflation was raging, everything was bad with the United States when I came into office. But I also inherited a mess with Ukraine and Russia, something that would have never happened. And I know Putin very well. He and I would discuss Ukraine. It was the apple of his eye, but he wasn't going to do anything. I said, Vladimir, you're not doing it. He would never have done it. It was terrible what happened. I could see it happening, too. After I left, I could see it happening. Biden had given Ukraine.
So now you've had both the president and the vice president in the last 24 hours speak directly to the concept of people being prosecuted, of people going to jail. President Trump twice in 24 hours making direct statements to the reveal of what happened in the 2020 election. We already know. It's just a matter of bringing it to the public. And The fact that they have not done it yet, in my opinion, is all about ensuring that they will be able to successfully prosecute each and every person that was involved. I'm not just talking about people at the top. I'm not just talking about people at the bottom. I'm talking about a network of thousands of people nationwide who were involved in the theft of the 2020 election. Many of them in Washington, D.C., some of them in foreign countries, some of them perhaps in your hometown. Continuing, President Trump also spoke at the World Economic Forum. Larry Fink from BlackRock spoke before President Trump arrived, and he openly admitted that the world does not trust the elites anymore, that Davos has less relevance and power than they have at any time since their founding. President Trump previously mentioned the executive order that he was signing to stop corporations from buying homes so that the American people would not be priced out of the housing market. And he told the people at Davos that he just signed it and it's now happening.
Home ownership has always been a of health and vigor of American society, but that goal fell out of reach for millions and millions of people in the Biden era because interest rates went up so high. Today, I'm taking action to bring back this bedrock of the American dream. In recent years, Wall Street giants and institutional investment firms, many of you are here, many of you are good friends of mine, many of you are supporters. Sorry to do this to you, I'm so sorry. But you've driven up housing prices by purchasing hundreds of thousands of single-family homes, and it's been a great investment for them. Often as much as 10% of houses on the market. You know, the crazy thing is a person can't get depreciation on a house, but when a corporation buys it, they get depreciation. Okay, that's something we're going to have to think about too. I don't know if too many people think about that. You buy a corporation, they buy 500 houses, they buy hundreds of thousands, they buy 500 houses, they can take depreciation. A person sweats and works and buys one house, they can't. But homes are built for people, not for corporations, and America will not become a nation of renters. We're not going to do that. That's why I have signed an executive order banning large institutional investors from buying single-family homes. It's just not fair to the public. They're not able to buy a house. And I'm calling on Congress to pass that ban into permanent law, and I think they will.
I believe that they will as well, because this will be key to ensuring the financial stability of American families going forward. I think that they also need to force those corporations like BlackRock and others to divest of their portfolios. I had no idea that corporations were allowed to take depreciation on homes after they purchase them. That pisses me off. Because think about how many people out there in America have been forced to pay higher property taxes because of this artificially inflated value of homes, homes that they had no intention of selling, that they knew they wouldn't be able to sell. And then they lose value when the prices collapse because the housing market is on the verge of collapsing right now because people have been forced out of by companies like BlackRock. So President Trump putting the very people in this audience that were responsible for the situation we have in American housing right now should not be lost on anyone. We also have a late-breaking comment from Russian President Vladimir Putin about he and his nation's membership in the Board of Peace. He has announced that Russia is ready to contribute $1 billion to President Trump's Board of Peace.
That we could contribute $1 billion to the Board of Peace from the frozen assets by the assets frozen by the previous administration, and the remaining funds from the funds frozen in the United States could be used to rebuild territories that suffered during hostilities. Once we sign a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine, I think that we could.
All right, so Russia stating that President Trump is free to take the assets that were seized by the Biden administration that have just been sitting in escrow this entire time and use them to rebuild Ukraine as soon as we sign a peace deal. Zelensky has nothing left. Let me also tell you, Zelensky did not go to the World Economic Forum this year. This is one of the best pieces of news that you could possibly imagine. President Trump using the Board of Peace to rebuild Gaza, to give the people of Gaza a home, and now with the approval of Russia, taking seized Russian assets and using them to rebuild Ukraine with the total go-ahead and okay of Russia. There's no pettiness with Russia. There's no desire that they have to continue killing people. There's no desire they have to continue engaging in a needless shedding of blood. They want peace. And the only thing stopping that right now is Zelensky. Hey, Would You Blow Me says, a Mountie from Canada is just another name for Canadian bacon. That's funny. All right. Now, we are finally going to talk about James O'Keefe's undercover report from Davos. He was able to get into Davos and have the elites of Davos, climate executives, spill their secrets about carbon taxes, weather modification, chemtrails. Yeah, so this is the full 20-minute video. We're not going to have time to watch it because it's 7 o'clock. But James O'Keefe said this week, the World Economic Forum said this week, hundreds of top political leaders from around the world, including close to 65 heads of state, gathered in Davos, Switzerland for the World Economic Forum's annual meeting. The world leaders are meeting against the most complex geopolitical backdrop in decades, with rising fragmentation and rapid technological change transforming the global economy. Participants include several G7 leaders as well as numerous heads of states from the G20 economies and BRICS countries. The leaders are gathering alongside nearly 850 of the world's top CEOs and chairs. So James O'Keefe wore a blonde wig to conceal his identity. He was able to get in, and while he was there, he spoke with WEF insider Emil Luth, who worked for DARPA, who discussed hidden plans about artificial rain. The president and CEO at 4Air said there is a pretty cheap way to cool down the earth. The ability to put sulfur dioxide up there is pretty cheap in a way to cool down the earth. The closest one I'm aware of is the Airborne Snow Observatory. They do some more like weather, I don't want to say modification, but more like upper atmosphere weather monitoring, to probably use a better term. Sarah Lemnini, CEO of SLK Capital, boasted about being one of the largest climate tax innovators for the UK government. We are looking at some carbon credits and renewable energy in the compliance markets, she told the OMG journalist. We are looking at carbon border adjustments, which is one of the new regulations where companies are exporting to Europe. And they also discussed chemtrails. Let me see if I can just play the introduction of the video here. I can't believe he was able to do this again.
Behind me is the Coast Hotel. I'm going to go in there.
Laser light comms and dark that company. Do you have that company in your portfolio that does artificial rain? There might be people around you that would be alleged to have an inclination to do that.
Got black rock behind us.
You know, to put sulfur dioxide up there is actually a pretty cheap way to cool down the earth.
Oh yeah.
So
I don't want aluminum oxides in my lettuce. Are you kidding me? A cocktail from hell that they're spraying above our heads.
Aluminum oxides, the cocktail from hell that they are spraying above our heads. Aluminum, barium, and strontium are the top constituents of chemtrails that have been identified by people like Dane Wigington, that we have talked about for decades being sprayed in chemtrails above our heads. And here we have somebody at the World Economic Forum admitting that this shit is actually taking place.
Yes.
You guys work with carbon taxes at all? We are one of the largest climate accelerators.
I think he noticed your wig, so I think we should... Yeah, let's go. Someone noticed the wig, so we have to get the hell out of here. How you doing, sir? And I support the work you guys are doing. I support what you guys are doing, because they said that BlackRock was behind all the climate stuff. Someone noticed the wig, so we have to get the hell out of here.
Anyways, I would highly suggest that you guys watch this. It's probably not going to have anything in there that you don't already know, but it is always a treat to see people like James O'Keefe successfully infiltrating and being able to get this information out there to the public and have these people admit behind closed doors when they think nobody is listening to the things that they have told us we are crazy for talking about for years, for demanding that something be done about. It's happening. 2026 is the year of exposure. I absolutely love it. Angie A81 says, I had damage to my basement from a flood during a natural disaster on Long Island. We deducted the depreciation of value on taxes. New York State taxed us on that depreciation. That is disgusting. Also, you guys may remember when I got into that accident in Las Vegas last year when Lisa and I were getting married and we were at GART Las Vegas. And I was told by a number of people who were insurance professionals in the audience that I needed to make a depreciation claim on my vehicle. I did that. And because the woman who caused the accident had no more money left in her policy, I was denied the depreciation claim by my own insurance company. All right. Now, President Trump also had an opportunity at Davos to talk about the fraud that is going on inside the United States. And he said that 50% of the U.S. budget is due to fraud. I need to refresh.
It could be more than $19 billion. Can you believe that? That's just one state. If we were able to cut out 50% of the fraud, 50%, and we should be able to do better than that, we would have a balanced budget without having to talk about even growth. So we have a lot of options, but we're working very hard on that. That's a big deal. It's not just the protests, the fake protests done by agitators and,
professional agitators. Also, newcomer Kimberly 65. Thank you so much for that $20 rant. Just jumping in the show to throw a bone real quick. I'm late, so I'm going to go back and watch later. Thank you, Zach. Thank you very much. All right, now we have today a decision from the U.S. Court of Appeals. They have lifted the restrictions that until today were on ICE, stopping them from using force against protesters in Minnesota. I know a lot of us have asked the question why ICE has been so patient. Well, apparently it was because they were under a court order. So now they are no longer restricted in the use of force against these paid protesters in Minnesota. Now, we also have this clip. This is going directly to the heart of people being arrested. Kelly Loeffler did an appearance on Fox discussing the findings that they've had in the Small Business Administration. $430 million stolen from taxpayers, 7,000 fraudulent business loans. She said on the very first day, when they started looking, they found $3 million in fraud. She said, there's handcuffs and jail time coming because what we saw when we dug into it, it didn't take long. All we did was scratch the surface, and within the first 2 days, we found $3 million worth of fraud, and that accumulated up to $430 million in one state. So Kelly Loeffler also saying that people are about to be charged. Now, we also have more information about the DOJ subpoenas that were delivered to Jacob Fry, Tim Walz, and all of those far-left Minnesota politicians. So we now have a criminal investigation into not only Tim Walz, Jacob Fry, Keith Ellison, Ilhan Omar, all of these other local politicians, but thousands of federal agents are already on the ground doing investigations into these illegal aliens, and so it's only natural that they look into these people in Minnesota politics because they were the ones responsible. They're the ones who didn't look. They're the ones who should be arrested in addition to everybody on the bottom that was stealing this money as well. So this escalates the investigation into determining exactly what these people knew and, most importantly, what they conspired to do to impede state leaders and the people who were supposed to be investigating this. The Trump administration is going full bore against each and every one of these corrupt individuals in Minnesota. St. Paul Mayor Kelly Herr, she's the one who said that she was illegal. She is being criminally investigated. She received a subpoena. Mayor Jacob Fry has also responded He said when the federal government weaponizes its power to try to intimidate local leaders for doing their jobs, well, it's actually the exact opposite. They are investigating because you didn't do your jobs. Every American should be concerned. We shouldn't have to live in a country where people fear the federal law enforcement and they will be used to play politics or crack down on local voices they disagree with. In Minneapolis, we won't be afraid. We know the difference between right and wrong. As mayor, I'll continue to do the job I was elected to do, keeping our community safe and standing up for our values. Well, Jacob, you did the exact opposite. Now, here is a breakdown of exactly what these subpoenas are looking for. So, in terms of Mayor Jacob Frey, the subpoena does not call upon Jacob Frey to testify. What it does do is call the custodian of records for the office of the mayor of Minneapolis to testify and produce documents on February 2nd at 9 a.m. How significant is this? It is extremely significant. The information the subpoena demands be produced could implicate Jacob Frey in directives given by his office that violate federal law. That would then result in a criminal indictment of Mayor Jacob Frey. So what must be produced? Records starting on January 1st, 2025 include all communications, all policies, all manuals, all procedures, all directives, all commands, all instructions, all guidance, all reference guides, all suggestions that were issued or possessed by the mayor's office relating to cooperation or lack of cooperation with federal immigration authorities. They must also produce all records and communications relating to compliance or lack of compliance with immigration detainers in the state of Minnesota. They must also provide all communications, including but not limited to emails, letters, memoranda, text messages, chats, instant messages, voice recordings, all of these things within the custody and control of the mayor's office to and from any political or governing body within the state of Minnesota, including the office of the governor of the state of Minnesota, the Hennepin County Board of Commissioners, and the Minneapolis Police Department relating to federal immigration enforcement in the state of Minnesota. They must also provide all guidance, presentations, directives, or training literature issued to the mayor's office employees, contractors, or Minnesota residents regarding interaction with immigration officers. This is a lot of information, and considering that everyone within the state government of Minnesota that has been directly involved in this scam, they're also being subpoenaed. There's no possible way that even if one person deletes communications, the other people are going to successfully be able to clean up all of those same things. This is a vast amount of data that they are seeking here, and all of it right now is being preserved. If anything is attempted to be deleted or erased, or they attempt to evade this subpoena, that itself will result in criminal prosecution for these people. We've also learned that now Ilhan Omar, in addition to the GOP House probe, is also under federal criminal investigation. She is not only under scrutiny by House Republicans investigating how she became so wealthy, amassing millions of dollars in a short period of time while working in Congress, it is now also being looked at by the FBI and the Department of Justice. Now, according to Jesse Waters, the House Oversight Committee is probing Somali-born congressman and her husband, Tim Minette, looking at exactly how they skyrocketed from basically bankruptcy to a staggering net worth of $30 million. This investigation should provide us with a fair amount of information about the ongoing interactions within the Washington, D.C. swamp. That $30 million that they got didn't just come out of nowhere. It came from someplace specifically, and so we're going to find out. Now, we also have an update from Jim O'Neill, the Deputy Secretary for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, on the federal child care dollars that were stolen by Minnesota and covered up by Governor Tim Walz. This one is a little comical, and I really appreciated this video from them.
Hello, I'm HHS Deputy Secretary Jim O'Neill.
And I'm Alex Adams, HHS Assistant Secretary for the Administration for Children and Families.
I just returned from Minnesota, where I met with whistleblowers and confronted state officials about welfare and Medicaid fraud. I also visited a former cannery that claims to house dozens of Medicaid providers. We're stopping Minnesota and other states from allowing federal funds to be diverted into scams.
We are also closing Biden-era loopholes in child care regulations that made fraud easy to perpetrate and harder to catch. In our last episode, we asked viewers to report suspected fraud through our tip line on childcare.gov. We've already received more than 500 tips, which we are investigating. Along with those tips, we also received unsolicited commentary about our performance. We thought we'd share a few of them with you.
Why does this feel like a late-night class-action lawsuit commercial? Do you or a loved one have mesothelioma? Call 1-800.
It looked like injury claim lawyers that have the nickname The Hammer on a billboard in rural Indiana.
These are the kind of nerds that will save the union.
These two bookworm assassins look like the only thing they possess is the time to people up.
You know that these guys know how to crunch numbers.
We do. I'm getting strong Bert and Ernie energy.
You're Bert. These dorks are amazing. They found policies that enable the massive fraud. They're stopping it. And they got in front of a camera to explain it to us. This is what I want my government to be.
I love these guys. The vibe feels like behind the camera people being told they need to wear a suit tomorrow.
Please keep the comments coming. But seriously, folks, every dollar stolen from these programs is stolen from working families who need it. Please continue reporting suspected fraud at childcare.gov. With your help, we can stop the scams.
The people are speaking and they are helping, and the government is listening. What is this world we live in? 2026 is freaking awesome, you guys. I absolutely love it. All right, now, you know what? I'll save that one for tomorrow. Okay, take a look at this video. The Somali community in Minnesota is now pleading with Black Americans to come to a truce so that together they can defeat the scourge of white supremacy that is coming down upon the Somali community.
I am currently asking for a ceasefire. I'm asking for a ceasefire between the Somalis and the African Americans. Please. We got something bigger going on right now. This is a divide and conquer situation happening in Minnesota. Y'all know we ride together when situations are...
God fuck you and every last one of them P. Diddy looking ass motherfuckers. Oval-shaped head ass motherfuckers. We don't give a fuck about nobody from Somalia. Fuck the whole Somalia. You motherfuckers was just stealing $9 billion. We wasn't cool then. You was hopping in your daycare funded ass motherfucking Lamborghini with your chrome heart glasses and telling us how black you fucking wasn't. Don't get on this bitch talking about we need to stick together now. Deport them bitches. These bitches retarded. These bitches real life retarded. You really think that you could go steal then come back when the money over with? Hey man, we black too. Get the fuck out of here.
I am currently asking for a ceasefire.
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. Based AF. All right. Also, in Minnesota, a major scandal has just been uncovered. $724 million going to an unnamed non-governmental organization. Minnesota's Department of Health and Human Services funneled nearly $750 million to this single NGO between 2021 and 2025. Now, here's the thing. In the records, every other recipient of money from the Department of Health and Human Services is named. They must be named. It's part of the public record. But for some reason, this particular NGO has had their name masked to protect not public data. Every single year, the payments would come. Every single year, they would get bigger. And every single year, they would remain unnamed. Now, the taxpayers of not only the state of Minnesota, but also the people of the United States, we deserve to know exactly what is this unnamed organization that was receiving so much money. We don't even know what it was for. All we know is that they got a lot of cash and the cash kept flowing. This is unheard of. But I have to admit, it is not surprising given what we have uncovered in the state of Minnesota. Now, I'll save that one. All right. Now, Nick Shirley testified today in Congress. Did a great job. All right. Now, I'm also going to save this. I'll probably play this tonight with Brad on Altered State. But he directly spoke to the fraud, why it is that Americans have galvanized around this issue, why it is that we need to end it, who it is that needs to be punished. And I feel like for the first time in history, the government is actually listening to the people of the United States. Oh, yes. Okay. California. President Trump shared this on Truth Social earlier. This is directly about Gavin Newsom in California. Much like how people started looking in their home state, we have a woman who joined Jesse Waters last night. She is a private investigator. She started looking into daycares in California, and she found the exact same thing they found in Minnesota. Ghost daycares. Daycares which had no children, were not open for business, but were receiving untold sums of money directly from the state of California. And even when the regulators determined that there were no children on site and they were not active businesses, the money continued to flow.
After what's been exposed with the daycares in Minnesota, I'm a licensed private investigator in California. I started looking into state records and I found ghost daycares. These are places where the state inspectors showed up. There would be 28 kids enrolled and there were no kids there in the middle of the day and in the middle of the week.
All right, so a ghost daycare. Is that something Gavin Newsom could say, all right, we'll try to shut that down? Does he cooperate when you start raising this?
No. In fact, today, it got word from the governor's office. There's been a directive to actually shut down public access. So right now, you can't even search the own state website to look into these ghost daycares, but I have found a workaround.
Okay, well, we don't want to tell the governor that you found a workaround, so.
All right, so just to underscore the fact that President Trump is aware this is happening in every state in the country, and we are finally addressing it. Now, the ICE takeover of Maine has begun. In addition to that, one of the first things that came across the news wires maybe a year and a half ago for me about the corruption going on in Maine was the presence of these off-book illegal Chinese marijuana grows. And the Maine State Police today raided a place called the Cannabis Hub in Fairfield. It is owned by China, and it is a place where they have many different infractions and disciplinary actions. We don't know exactly what's going on with this, but it is an illegal grow. It is an illegal operation, and the money from these illegal operations were funneling up to the governor of Maine, and it's one of the reasons why they were continuing to allow them. We also have more of the same that we found in Minnesota, in Maine as well, including ghost home health care companies. Here is an example. This is the building where 5-Star Home Health, one of these corrupt businesses that was recently shut down and had direct ties to the state government. And you've got dozens of these businesses operating out of the same location, none of them operational, all of them receiving money from the taxpayer.
We're here in Portland, Maine. We found of the businesses that are registered in here, of the 20-something businesses, 10 of them are home health care businesses. As you can see, Prestige Home Care, Bright Star Home Care, Atlantic Community.
Prestige Worldwide, anybody?
Support 5 Stars Home Health Care, Prime Home Care, LLC. It's a trend we saw in Minnesota, one that the Minnesota House Oversight Committee on Fraud tells News Nation is a giant red flag. Large clusters of healthcare providers in one location. This building right behind me has 22 different home and community-based healthcare companies registered in the building. Inside this Portland office building, owner Ron Nevins agreed to speak with us.
I think I got 10 healthcare companies, which is probably about half, maybe a little less than half of this building.
Healthcare, home healthcare. I didn't even know what home healthcare was. Do you think these businesses are actually legit businesses?
Some, yes, but some I highly question. Nobody's ever.
He knows that they're fake because nobody ever shows up. All right, you guys, I've got to get going because I got to get ready for Altered State. All right, and let me see. Final thank yous. Emerald Dragon 1333. Zach, it wasn't me that kicked Muffin or Chi-Chi. I don't know why, but don't read my previous rant. What was the other one? Hold on. Did I miss a rant from you? Oh, I guess I missed a couple. Hey, would you blow me said, check out Trump's Truth Social. A deal for Greenland has been made. I did that. Surtur, didn't Shakespeare warn us about the state of Denmark centuries ago? Yes. Frey and the boys says, I think they made a deal already, Zach. Yes, I know. I was just waiting until we got to the part. I had all that other shit I wanted to show. Emerald, was Gavin Newsom hobnobbing or knob-hobbing? Asking for a friend. He was definitely knob-hobbing. And I'm going to make sure I didn't miss any others. Okay, yes, I think I got all of them now. Yes, I did get all of them. Thank you for that, you guys. Really appreciate it. Let's see. Thank you to... okay, let's see. I need to jump up to... Okay, Moon Baby. Okay, Filter Dog. Obama appointed Judge Paul Engelmeyer has ordered a second review of the Epstein documents and is now requiring recertification of those documents by U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton. Yes, I had heard that, and I was just waiting for some confirmation on it. I just saw that somebody had said it, but I guess you're confirming it. No thanks, Joe says Solomon is so solid he's actually mentioned in the 17 drops smoking. Amen. That's exactly it. Boys Blanc 89, thank you for the cookie. Sean Joe, thank you for the cookie and another cookie. Rise the Tire says, funny you should mention American Psycho Gavin Newsom, bro. Play this meme I just made. Trust me. Okay, we'll pull that up. Actually, yeah, okay, I will play this.
We have to provide food and shelter for the homeless and oppose racial discrimination and promote civil rights while also promoting equal rights for women. We have to promote general social concern and less materialism in young people. How thought-provoking. We have to provide...
Directly from American Psycho. I love it. Filter Dog says, the West cannot mass import foreign cultures which have failed to ever build a successful society of their own. Statement from President Donald J. Trump, 100%. Sean Joe, thank you for 2 cookies. One Thunder, thank you for the can. Good Dog, thank you for the can. Red Gun, thank you for the can. Zeta Anon, thank you for the can. And Sean Joe, thank you for the cookie. I really do appreciate you guys. I've got to get ready, got to have dinner, got Altered State at 9 p.m. Join me tonight. I think that... Jordan is going to be stepping in for Brad because Brad is stuck at the dentist. I think that something's going on with Abby. Hopefully she's okay. Keep them both in your prayers. And I will go ahead and pass out the gold pills, and I hope to see you tonight. If I don't see you tonight, then I hope to see you tomorrow at 5 p.m. right here for another episode of Red Pill News Live. Good luck, and God bless.